Chapter 6. The next morning, I woke with my fingers curled around Mother's necklace. The clock in King Gerald's palace was just striking 6. Perfect. I wanted to rise early and spend the day saying goodbye to the places I loved best. I put my gown over the necklace and crept down to the pantry where I found a tray of freshly baked scones. They were hot, so I tossed 2 in the air and caught them in my skirt, pulling it out to make a basket. Then looking down at my breakfast, I ran to the front of the house and right into Father. He was in the entranceway, waiting for Nathan to bring the carriage around. "I don't have time for you now, Eleanor. Run off and bang into somebody else, and tell Mandy I'll be back with the bailiff. We'll need lunch." As instructed, I ran off. Aside from its dangerous aspects, the curse often made a fool of me and was partly the reason I seemed so clumsy. Now I had to bang into someone. Bertha was carrying wet laundry. When I bumped into her, she dropped the basket. My gowns and stockings and undergarments tumbled into the tiles. I helped her pick them up, but she was going to have to wash everything over again. "Little mistress, it's hard enough getting your things ready so quick without having to do it twice," she scolded. After I apologized and after I delivered Father's message to Mandy, and after she made me sit down and eat breakfast on a plate, I started for the royal menagerie just outside the walls of the king's palace. My favorite exhibits were the talking birds and the exotic animals. Except for the Hydra and her swamp and the baby dragon, the exotics, the unicorn, the herd of centaurs, and the griffin family lived on an island meadow surrounded by an extension of the castle moat. The dragon was kept in an iron cage. He was beautiful in his tiny ferocity and seemed happiest when flaming, his ruby eyes gleaming evilly. I bought a morsel of yellow cheese from the stand next to the cage and tossed it to the fire, which was a tricky business because getting close enough for cooking, but not so close the dragon got the treat. I wondered what King Gerald planned to do with him when he grew up. I wondered also whether I would be home to learn his fate. Beyond the dragon, a centaur stood near the moat, gazing at me. Did centaurs like cheese? I walked toward him quietly, hoping he wouldn't gallop off. "Here," a voice said. I turned. It was Prince Charmant, offering me an apple. "Thank you." Holding out my hand, I edged closer to the moat. The centaur's nostrils flared, and he trotted toward me. I tossed the apple. 2 other centaurs galloped over, but mine caught the treat and started eating, crunching loudly. "I always expect them to say thank you to me, or to say, 'How dare you stare?'" I said. "They're not smart enough to talk. See how blank their eyes are?" He pointed, teaching me. I knew all that, but perhaps it was a princely duty to explain matters to one's subjects. "If they had words," I said, "they wouldn't be able to think of anything to say." A surprised silence followed. Then Char laughed. "That's funny. You're funny, as the Lady Eleanor was." He looked stricken. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to remind you." "I think of her often," I said, "most of the time." We walked along the edge of the moat. "Would you like an apple too?" He held out another one. I wanted to make him laugh again, and I pawed the ground with my right foot and tossed my head as though I had a mane. Opening my eyes as wide as they'd go, I stared stupidly at Char and took the apple. He did laugh. Then he made an announcement. "I like you. I'm quite taken with you." He took a 3rd apple for himself out of the pocket of his cape. I liked him too. He wasn't haughty or disdainful or stuffy, as High Chancellor Thomas was. All the Kirins bowed as we passed, and the visiting elves and gnomes did too. I didn't know how to respond, but Char raised his arm each time, bent at the elbow in the customary royal salute. It was habit, natural to him as teaching. I decided on a deep nod. Curtsies often tipped me over. We came to the parrot cages, my other favorite place. I gotta switch hands 1 second. That's easier. We came to the parrot cages, my other favorite place. The birds spoke all the languages of the earth, human, foreign tongues, and the exotic tongues of Gnomic, Elfian, Ogrish, and Abdigi, the language of the giants. I loved to imitate them, even though I didn't know what they were saying. Simon, their keeper, was my friend. When he saw Char, he bowed low. Then he returned to feeding an orange bird. "This one's new," he said. "Speaks Gnomic and doesn't shut up." The parrot said. I repeated. "You speak Gnomic?" Char said. "I like to make the sounds. I only know what a few words mean." She does it just right, doesn't she, Your Highness? Char gave up. It sounded better when you did it. The parrot squawked. Do you know what he said? I asked Simon, who was able to translate occasionally. Simon shook his head. Do you know, sir? No, it sounds like gargling. Other visitors claimed Simon's attention. Excuse me, he said. Char watched while I said farewell to each bird. That was gnomic for until we dig again. Ogreish for much eating. Abdigi for I miss you already. Elfin for walk in the shade. I memorized the sight of the birds and Simon. Goodbye, I called. He waved. Lest they be frightened out of their feathers, a garden separated the birds from the ogres. We passed beds of flowers while I tried to teach Char a few of the words he'd just heard. My memory was good, but his accent was unalterably Kyrian. His memory was good, but his accent was unalterably Kyrian. If they heard me, the elves would never let me stand under a tree again. The gnomes would hit you over the head with a shovel. Would the ogres decide I was unworthy of consumption? We neared their hut. Even though they were locked in, soldiers were posted within arrow range. An ogre glared at us through a window. Ogres weren't dangerous only because of their size and their cruelty. They knew your secrets just by looking at you, and they used their knowledge. When they wanted to be, they were irresistibly persuasive. By the end of an ogre's first sentence in Kieran, you forgot his pointy teeth, the dried blood under his fingernails, and the coarse black hair that grew on his face in clumps. He became handsome in your eyes, and you thought him your best friend. By the end of the second sentence, you were so won over that he could do whatever he wanted with you. Drop you in a pot and to cook, or if he was in a hurry, eat you raw. A soft lisping voice said. I should do that in a soft lisping voice. A soft lisping voice said. Did you hear that? I asked. Doesn't sound like an ogre. Where did it come from? The voice repeated, this time with a hint of tears in its tone. A toddler gnome poked his head out of an aqueduct only a few feet from the hut. I saw him at the same time the ogre did. He could reach the child through the unglazed window. I started for the boy, but Char was quicker. He snatched him up just before the ogre's arm shot out. Char backed away, holding the youngster, who squirmed to get out of his grasp. Give him to me, I said, thinking I might be able to quiet him. Char handed him over. The ogre hissed, glaring at Char. Then he turned to me and his expression changed. He started laughing. Tears of mirth streaked down his cheeks, leaving trails on his filthy face. Then he said in Kieran, not bothering to make his voice persuasive, Come to me and bring the child. I stood my ground, and now I had to break the curse. My life and another's depended on it. My knees began to tremble from the need to walk. I held back, and my muscles cramped, shooting pain through my calves. I squeezed the little gnome in my effort to resist, and he yelped and twisted in my arms. The ogre continued to laugh. Then he spoke again. Obey me this instant. Come, now. Against my will, I took a step. I stopped, and the trembling started again. Another step, and another. I saw nothing except that leering face looming closer and closer. One thing that I think is interesting between the book and the movie is I feel like in the movie, you don't forget that Ella has to be commanded and everything. But, like, here I was like, why? I kept thinking, why did the ogre have such power over her? And then I was like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's an ogre or a gnome or an elf that gives her a command. Like, she has to follow it. And so the ogres, in the book anyway, an ogre, if it looks at you, it knows your secrets. And so the ogre looks at her and then just starts laughing because he's like, your secret is that you have to obey me. And so he's like, just bring me the child. And he's not even trying to, like, use his, like, persuasiveness, which I found very, very funny. I also find the baby gnome kind of interesting. And I like the fact that, like, I think she's supposed to be 15 or 16 here, right? I like the fact that her and Char, like, get to know each other a little bit. I feel like in the movie, she just meets Char and he's like, you're the only girl not obsessed with me. And in this one, it's just like, he's like, you're kind of funny. Like, oh, that's funny. And she's like, okay, I guess. But, like, she lives pretty close to where he lives. Like, she lives close to the castle, the king's castle in her hometown. So I find that very interesting. I don't know if she lives in Frel. Because I know in the movie she lives in Frel. That's where she lives. But I don't think that's where she lives in the book. I don't remember, actually. Anyway. Well, that was chapter 6, right? Yes, on to 7. Why, hello, Grandpapa. It is I, Hunter, yet again. Currently in my bed, in a sweatshirt, sweatpants, and long socks, because it's like 30 degrees outside, maybe like a little bit, but maybe a little bit warmer now, since it's like 2 p.m. Well, 1:30. I am waiting for my laundry to get done. I have about 20 minutes for this load, and then I got to put my other load in, and then I have to go make mashed potatoes for a dinner tonight, so that'll be fun. Anyway, we're on chapter 7. Where are you going? Char cried. He could see where I was going. I must, I said. Stop! I command you to stop. I stopped and stood shaking, while soldiers crowded around the hut, their swords pointed at the ogre, who glared at me, then turned his back and retreated into the dim interior. Why did you listen to him? Char asked. I was still having trouble with the child. He was pulling his little beard and wriggling to escape. He cried. I used his distress to avoid answering the question. He's frightened. But Char wasn't distracted. Why did you listen to him, Ella? I had to answer, somehow. His eyes, I lied. Something about them. I had to do what he wanted. Have they found a new way to bewitch us? Char sounded alarmed. I must tell my father. The gnome child wailed, thrashing at the air. I wondered if the parrot's words might soothe him. I spoke them, hoping they weren't an insult. The child's face cleared, and he smiled, showing pearly baby teeth. He repeated. There was a dimple in the folds of his wrinkles and baby fat. I put him down, and he took my hand in Char's. His parents must be worried, I said. I didn't know how to ask him where they were, and he was probably too young to answer. They weren't by the ferocious beasts or by the grazing animals. At last we spied an ancient female gnome sitting on the ground near the pond. Her head was between her knees, an image of defeat. Other gnomes searched the reeds and hedges or questioned passers-by. Fravnamak, the little gnome called, pulling at Char and me. The old gnome looked up, her face wet with tears. Ravthus! She grabbed him in a tight hug and covered his face and beard with kisses. Then she peered at us and recognized Char. Highness, thank you for the return of my grandson. Char coughed, an embarrassed laugh. We're glad to bring him back, madam, he said. He was almost an ogre's lunch. Char, Prince Charmant saved him, I said, and saved me, too. You have the gratitude of the gnomes, the gnome bowed her head. I am Zaptaf. Hardly taller than I, she was much wider, not stout, but wide, which is the direction gnomes grow after they reach adulthood. She was the most dignified personage I've ever seen, and the oldest, except for Mandy, probably. Her wrinkles had wrinkles, some folds and deeper folds of leathery skin, small folds and deeper folds of leathery skin. Her eyes were deep set, and their copper color was clouded. I curtsied and wobbled. I'm Ella, I said. More gnomes came, and we were surrounded. How did you persuade him to come with you? Zapharet asked. He would not come with most humans. Ella spoke to him, Char said, sounding proud of me. What did you say? I hesitated. It was one thing to imitate parrots for Simon, or to speak to a baby. It was another to sound like a fool in front of this stately lady. Frasuk evigun brazi et hagmaninen akvede brazi. I said finally. No wonder he came with you, Zafatif said. Wow, these words are hard. They're like all spelled backwards and they're whatever. Salf cried joyously. He squirmed in her arms. A younger gnome woman took the child. Where did you learn to speak gnomic? She asked. I'm Zufar's mother. I explained about the parrots. What did I say to him? It is an expression. We say it as a greeting, Havert said. In Kirid it is, digging is good for the wealth and good for the health. She held her hand out to me. Havert is the only one who will save it. Havert is not the only one you will save. I see it. What else could she see? Mandy had said a few gnomes could tell the future. Can you see what's ahead for me? Gnomes do not see detail. What you will wear tomorrow, what you will say are mysteries. I see outlines only. What are they? Danger, a quest, 3 figures. They're close to you, but they're not your friends. She let my hand go. Beware of them. On our way out of the menagerie, Char said, Tonight I shall triple the guard around the ogres, and soon I shall catch a centaur and give it to you. Dame Olga was punctual. She and her daughters watched while my trunk and a barrel of tonic were loaded on top of the coach. Father was there to see me off, and Mandy stood at a distance. How few things you have, Hattie told me. Dame Olga agreed. Ella is not outfitted in accordance with her station, Sir Peter. My girls have 8 trunks between them. Hattie has 5.5 trunks, Mother, and I have only... Olive stopped speaking to count on her fingers. Less, I have less, and that's not fair. Father cut in smoothly. It's most kind of you to take Ella with you, Dame Olga. I only hope she won't be a bother. Oh, she won't be a bother, Sir P. I'm not going. Father winced at the abbreviation. Dame Olga continued. With a coachman and 2 footmen, they will be safe from everything except ogres, and from ogres I could offer little protection. Besides, they'll have more fun without their old mother. After a pause, Father said, Not old, never old, madam. He turned to me. I wish you a comfortable journey, child. He kissed my cheek. I'll miss you. Liar. A footman opened the coach door. Hattie and Olive were handed in. I ran to Mandy. I couldn't leave without a last hug. Make them all disappear, please, I whispered. Oh, Ella, sweetie, you'll be fine. She clasped me hard. Eleanor, your friends are waiting, Father called. I climbed into the coach, stowing a small carpet bag in a corner, and we started to move. For comfort, I touched my chest where Mother's necklace was concealed. If she was alive, I wouldn't be rolling away from home in the company of these strangers. That's not what that says. In the company of these creatures. I would never embrace a cook, Hattie shuddered. No, I agreed. What cook would let you? Hattie returned with an earlier subject. With so few belongings, the other girls will hardly know whether you're a servant or one of us. Why does your gown pucker in front? Olive asked. Is that a necklace? Why wear it under your clothes? Hattie asked. Is it ugly? Olive said. Is that why you hide it? It's not ugly. Show it to us. Ollie and I so want to see it. In order. I brought it out. It didn't matter here. There were no thieves to steal it. Oh, Olive said. That's even nicer than Mamma's best chain. No one would think you were a servant with that. It's very fine, although it's much too long for you. Hattie fingered the silver ropes. Olive, see how milky the pearls are. Olive's fingers joined Hattie's. Let go! I shifted out of their reach. We wouldn't hurt it. May I try it on? Mother lets me try on her necklaces, and I never hurt them. No, you can't. Oh, let me. There's a dear. In order. Do I have to? I asked. It slipped out. I could have swallowed my tongue. Hattie's eyes glittered. Yes, you have to. Give it over. Just a minute, I said, unclasping it. I didn't delay. They mustn't see me struggle against the curse. Fasten it around my neck. I did so. Olive. The order had been for her sister. Fasten it around my neck. I did so. Olive. The order had been from her sister. Thank you, my dear. Hattie settled back in her seat. I was born to wear jewels like this. Let me try it, Ella, Olive said. When you're older, Hattie answered. But I had to obey. I tried desperately to ignore Olive's order, but all my complaints started. Churning stomach, pounding temples, shortness of breath. Let her have her turn, I said, through clenched teeth. See, Olive said. Ella says I can. I know what's best for you, Olive. You and Ella are both too young. I lunged at her and unfastened the necklace before she had time to stop me. Don't give it to her, Ella, Hattie said. Return it to me. I did. Give it to me, Ella, Olive said, her voice rising. Don't be so mean, Hattie. I snatched the necklace back from Hattie and passed it to Olive. Hattie stared at me. I could see her start to work out what had happened. Mother wore that necklace to her wedding, I said, hoping to deflect their thoughts. And her mother, are you always so obedient, Ella? Return the necklace to me. I won't let her, Olive said. Yes, you will, or I'll see it that you get no dinner tonight. I took the necklace away from Olive. Hattie fastened it around her neck and patted it complacently. Ella, you should give it to me. It would be a token of our friendship. We're not friends. Yes, we are. I'm devoted to you. Olive likes you too, don't you, Olive? Olive nodded solemnly. I believe you will give it to me if I say you must. Do so, Ella, for friendship's sake. You must. No, I wouldn't. She couldn't have it. You can have it. The words burst out from me. Thank you. What a generous friend we have, Olive. She changed the subject. The servants were careless when they cleaned the coach. This dust ball is a disgrace. We shouldn't have to ride in such filth. Pick it up, Ella. An order I liked. I grabbed the dust and ground it into her face. It becomes you, I said, but the satisfaction was fleeting. I think this chapter's pretty straightforward. It is very similar how it is in the book, where Hattie kind of figures the curse out on her own and Olive's kind of stupid, and it does have to do with the necklace. In the movie, Hattie doesn't figure it out on her own. She she figures it out on her own, but it's not with the necklace. She does end up taking the necklace, but another thing is that at this point in the movie, I think Hattie has this huge crush on Char, and Char's seen as kind of like a playboy, and in this, we don't have any indication that Hattie even knows who Char is, at least not yet, and I find it interesting because, her dad sucks, right? In the book, Ella's dad sucks. And Dame Olga isn't great either. They both are poopy-faced bum-bums. But in the movie, I feel like her dad's just kind of complacent. And also the fact that, she's going with Hattie and Olive away to school. She's not staying at home. And I think that that's very interesting.